I want to share a tale. I want to share a
Take it
tale
to
that
shit.
shows
Ooh.
a pristine example of vulgarity having optimum utility in it. And I've used this tale a couple times. It was reiterated to me
Know you.
from a college professor in sociology. And he was recounting a time that he had worked in an assembly and was one of the monitors for lunchtime in the cafeteria. And he was particularly frustrated with what was a prolific, semi dangerous thing that would regularly happen, in that the children were very unwise and very messy about stacking their trays, which would cause them to occasionally, fall over, tip over, which could cause, slips and falls or hurt people and things like that. So they had to basically have him, as opposed to what he would typically do, is probably sitting in his room having his lunch. He has to be in there monitoring the children and for the stacking of the trays, as volunteer for the extra staff to do it. And he was very frustrated with constantly nicely reminding the children, day after day, week after week, time after time, to stack the trays for the sake of the better good of wanting to make sure that the trays were stacked for the safety of all. So he had an idea. As a relatively brilliant sociology professor, he thought to himself, I'm going to fix this. I have an idea. So he waited for the first day of assembly with all the new freshmen coming in, and he went to his typical duties in the lunch cafeteria area where the trays would typically be stacked, to sit there and wait patiently, right in that spot for the very first person to come up there and stack their tray unneatly or in a haphazard way. But you keep in mind, they had signs up and all this other stuff. Kids didn't care. They tossed it down and make a mess. It was a disaster, slips and falls, insurance problems. So this was a bit of an issue in an all around way. Even though they had signs up, it wasn't solving it. So this professor had an idea. He waited for that first student, which was a young girl, freshman girl, who came up and stacked her tray unneatly and just tossed it down in a kind of haphazard way when it said stack the trays neatly. And he marched right up to her and stared her square in the face and said, how many fucking times do we have to tell you goddamn kids to stack your fucking trays? Straighten it up, you filthy, stupid cunt! Now, the entire assembly, as you can imagine, eyes as wide as saucers, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone froze in their place. And this poor little innocent girl who had just done this thing was not expecting such a reaction. Just immediately grabbed her tray and stacked it neatly and just ran out of the cafeteria. Now, the funny thing was, for the rest of that semester and in perpetuity, they didn't have a problem with kids not stacking their trays correctly. In fact, there was now a new sign that was next to the trays, which was carried through a meme of the professor himself in cartoon form, screaming out in a speech bubble, stack your fucking trays, you cunts. And in perpetuity, the problem of the tray issue in the lunchroom was solved. And God knows how many slips and falls and errors were saved from that.